Painter and Ugly. This says the Junior Iditarod Trail. There's the start and finish line. Goes over. You want to see this part? Zip. All right. Painter and Ugly were best friends. Through winter, spring, summer, and fall, they were always together. Nothing could keep them apart. Painter and Ugly. After every sled racing season, the boy called Jake always left his dog team to run free on an island on the Yukon River. He was good to the team, and every day returned with fresh water, food, and hugs for each dog. Jake prized every one of his dogs, especially the two that were always together. He named one Painter when he knocked over a can of paint. He named the other Ugly because most of the paint spilled on him. Wherever you saw Painter, there you saw Ugly. If Painter went to fetch a stick, Ugly brought it back with him. If Ugly howled at the moon, Painter sang harmony. And when Jake built Painter's house too far away from Ugly's, the dog pushed it all the way down the hill and set it next to his best friends. Through the warm days of summer, right into fall, Painter and Ugly ran together, swam together, and even ate out of each other's dinner bowls together. And if for any reason they were apart, one dog would call out, "Yip!" The other would answer, "Yip!" And soon the two friends were running side by side as fast as they could. But one day, Jake did not come with food, water, or hugs. Instead, there came a man with a voice like a chainsaw who herded the dogs onto a boat. Painter was happy to go on the boat because it meant that the team was going to the mainland, and going to the mainland meant that race training was about to begin. And race training meant that Painter and Ugly, the fastest of all the local dogs, would soon be leading Jake and the team in the Junior Iditarod race. "Yip!" Painter called, and Ugly ran to join him at the front of the boat. But when the team reached the mainland, there was still no Jake. There were only people shouting and waving papers. Big Tonka cried out. Big Tonka cried out when he was hauled off by a woman in a beaver coat. Keen-Eye growled as he was taken by a hairy man who smelled of bacon. Painter tried to slip out of his collar when a red-haired boy pulled him away from Ugly. Ugly jumped from side to side when a black-haired boy rushed him away from his friend. Each dog was placed into a different dog box on a different truck. Every truck drove each dog to a different home. On his new dog lot, Painter peeked out of his doghouse at the other dogs. They all knew each other. Painter knew none of them. "Yip!" he called out to Ugly, but no answer came. Painter was surrounded by dogs, but he felt alone. On his first training run, Painter was distracted as he looked for his best friend. He yipped at every team they passed, hoping Ugly would yip back. He missed commands, took wrong turns, and even ran the team up over a snowbank when he thought he caught his friend's scent in the woods. The red-haired boy had to wade into the thigh-high snow to untangle the team. Then he took Palmer's face in his hands and said, "You got to learn your place on the team." You got to earn your place on the team. Painter did not understand the words, but he felt the tone in the boy's voice. He settled down then and easily impressed the musher. By the time they went on their third practice run, Painter had earned the lead position. Then came Junior Iditarod race day. 200 dogs on 20 teams. Every dog was barking, rolling in the snow, and leaping high in the air. All except one. Painter stood still, with his nose tasting the air. Rushing across the frozen river and through the race grounds, the wind delivered the sounds and smells of every team, and it brought Painter one familiar scent: ugly. 8 teams had already left when it was Painter's team's turn in the starting chute. The dogs barked and howled, screamed and cried, and then suddenly the whole team went silent. They were ready to take off. Soon the only sounds that could be heard were the jingling of the dogs' tags, jing, 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 and the hiss of the sled runners on the snow. After 80 miles of racing, Painter's team arrived at the halfway checkpoint, just 15 minutes behind the first-place team. Here the teams were required to stop and rest for 10 hours. The red-haired boy gave the dogs water, food, and soft hay bedding to sleep on. As his team slept, Painter sat looking, sniffing, listening, hoping for a sign of his friend. Then across the chill night came a familiar call. Yip! Yip! Painter called back. Quiet! Yelled a musher. The dogs went silent. But all through the night, just every once in a while, a soft yip ran across the night air, and another yip chased it back. At dawn, a great chorus of howls arose from a team behind a nearby snowdrift. They got louder and louder until suddenly they went silent. Painter knew this meant the first-place team had hit the trail. He cocked his ears and listened to the jing, jing, jing of the team's tags. Painter leaped into the air when the team sprinted into view. Ugly was the lead dog. Ugly signaled to Painter by flicking his ears and letting out 3 quick yips. Painter answered with 3 quick yips of his own. Then Ugly and his team were gone. Up ahead, Ugly brought his team across the frozen Reunited River. When they reached the other side, his musher gave the command to turn left. Ha! But Ugly did not turn his team. Instead, he called out, yip, 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 and jumped off the trail into the low brush. When Painter reached the same turn, he called out, yip, 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 and jumped into the woods too. A mile into the woods, Painter's team came upon the black-haired boy, alone in the snow. Ugly had led his team under some low branches, forcing the musher to jump from his sled. The red-haired boy ran to him as soon as he could slow his team. Are you all right? He called. Painter called too. Yip, yip, yip. Then he howled. Aroo! From below the ridge came the answer. Yip, yip, yip. Aroo! Before the boys could stop them, Painter and his team ran off. Soon the only sound that could be heard was that of a lonely raven calling in the chill air, until the wind brought the sound of something approaching from under the ridge. Jing, jing, jing. Oh, look at that. Together at last, Painter and Ugly waited for no one. The teams ran hard to keep up with their leaders, and the boys ran hard to catch up with their sleds. Just as the dogs reached the frozen river, the 2 mushers jumped on the sled runners and called, faster, to their teams. Painter and Ugly knew they had to run full out to catch up to the teams that had gotten ahead of them while they were off the trail. But running full out together is what they liked best. Once they reached the zone called No Man's Land, Painter and Ugly passed every dog in sight. Painter and Ugly crossed the finish line at exactly the same time together. Not a nose, not even one whisker stood out farther in front of one dog than the other. People will talk about that race forever. What happened, how it happened, and why it happened, in the way that people do. But Painter and Ugly, they never cared about people's talk. Painter and Ugly only cared about being together, because nothing can keep two real friends apart. And that's it. Painter and Ugly.